Welcome back to MurrayMax. We have a video this time from a video breakdown from the Piers Morgan show. This one's got Michael Knowles on it. I'm a Michael Knowles fan. I like a lot of the things he has to say. There's a couple things I disagree with him on, obviously, but I don't know why I want to say that. Anyways. Let's take a look at this clip. The context of this one is that the leftist knows nothing about the Crusades. So I'm assuming this probably has to do with Pete Hegseth's tattoo or something, because I can't think of any other reason why the Crusades would even come up in talking points on this show. But let's take a look here and see what we got. As usual, I haven't watched the video yet, so we're watching this together. Be sure to comment and let me know what you think.
The case with Pete Hegseth. Michael, where do you sit with this?
Well, so much of what Wajahat just said is not true, or as you point out, Piers, is completely unsubstantiated, like the allegations that Pete Hegseth shows up drunk to work. Excuse me one second, Wajahat. I've been on that morning show with Pete a number of times. I've been in studio with him a number of times. The only thing you could accuse Pete of is being too alert and energetic. I found it overwhelming, actually, while I was there, tired, trying to dust the sand out of my eyes. But you suggest that the graduate of Princeton and Harvard, who for decades has been in the U.S. military, served his country honorably, that he's somehow unqualified to work at the Pentagon. The most egregious accusation you make against him, though, is that he's an extremist because he has a tattoo. Could you tell us what the tattoo is?
The tattoos specifically, I did not make the allegation that he's an extremist. It was actually
you
his
repeated the
fellow
allegation.
colleague
so what's
who
the
called
tattoo?
him as an insider threat.
Yeah, right. So what's the tattoo?
I can tell you. It says
it was his fellow
No,
colleague.
let Wajahat answer, because you raised it. Hang on, Wajahat raised the tattoo.
Go ahead.
Wajahat, it's a fair question. What is this tattoo?
He doesn't even know. He wants to post about it and talk about it, but he has no clue.
I mentioned the facts. It was his colleague. Wait. Two things.
Wajahat, hang on. Simple question. What is this tattoo that you're so upset about?
I wasn't the one upset about it. I was talking about his fellow colleague. This is exactly what I said. His fellow colleague.
Do you know what it was?
In the U.S. Army, called him out as a potential insider threat.
Well, what is the
tattoo?
tattoo?
The tattoos on his chest.
Huh? What is the tattoo?
Also, I called him an extremist based upon his own book. Read the book,
What
American
is the
Crusade,
tattoo?
his own words.
If you don't know what the tattoo is, just admit it.
Oh, my Lord. Listen,
would you
what
like
is
to
it?
tell you what the tattoo is?
Wait.
No, I'm genuinely intrigued. Do you know what it is or not, Wajahat?
We got a panelist.
Wajahat, do you know what it is or not?
She hasn't spoken yet. A woman hasn't spoken yet.
She's going to come on
this panel.
Oh, yeah. Now it's about... I would answer the question, but I want to give a woman a platform to speak. You didn't care about giving her a platform to speak until you got checked on not knowing what you're talking about.
He's going to answer the question you're not answering. Final question to you, Wajahat.
I did answer it, but
Final
chance. I got my colleague right here.
Be honest, Wajahat. Do you actually know what that tattoo is or not?
Listen, what I do know is I read his book, and in his book, if you read it, called American Crusade, in his book, wait a second.
Be honest.
His book,
be honest.
I am. Look,
ironically,
you guys are putting lipstick on a pig,
no one's going to crucify you if you don't know the
Donald
answer.
Trump,
but do you know the
putting
answer?
our national security at risk for Pete Hegseth. I am telling you everything, and you guys are finding ways to spin. Why are you guys?
No. This is a perfect example of why the left doesn't want to debate people 99% of the time, and they probably shouldn't, because you can't really just use feelings to make everything happen.
We're simply asking you,
who has an NDA with a woman that he allegedly sexually assaulted.
Do you know what the tattoo is that you got so upset about?
It was his colleague. His colleague called him out as an insider threat, not me. His colleague.
A simple question.
And I also said, go to his book, read his words.
But just to be clear, Wajahat, you haven't got
Pete stuff.
I am too extreme from the U.S. military. Pete Hegseth's own words. Why are you okay with that, Michael?
Wajahat, you don't know,
Michael, why are you guys okay with that?
You don't know,
literally in his book, American Crusade, he says he's too extreme for the U.S. military.
You don't know, do you?
Oh my gosh! All right, let's look it up right now.
I'd also love to know the names of some of Fox colleagues.
Don't look it up. Let's go back to Michael. Michael, hang on, Michael. We gave him his chance. He obviously has no idea. Michael, what is the answer?
This falls along a threat as an insider threat.
I'm going back to Michael now.
2021 pegged Pete Hegseth as a potential insider.
You had 98 chances to answer, and you
failed
the test.
Sorry.
I'm going to Michael. I'm going to Michael. Don't talk over each other.
Like Piers is saying, you had your chance to speak and answer the question, And not only that, I thought you were trying to give the platform to the woman on the panel who you suddenly don't care about giving her any speaking time now that you are moving past having to answer the question.
Michael. The tattoo in question is called a Jerusalem cross. That this is a medieval Christian symbol, goes back a long time. In fact, at Jimmy Carter's funeral, there was a Jerusalem cross on the floor of the cathedral, and on the program for the funeral, there's one other tattoo that some have suggested could be extremist. It's the phrase Deus Vult, which is a medieval Christian slogan, a long traditional slogan that refers to God's will, and it goes back a long way. These are very traditional, very mainstream Christian symbols that not only are not extreme in any way, but which even the people who want to accuse him of extremism couldn't possibly name. That is pathetic.
And as for the cross that you talked about, yes, Deus Vult, which is the cross that he has, and the slogan that he has,
Deus Vult is
an old Christian cross. The phrase, however, was uttered by Crusaders as they were slaughtering Jews and Muslims during the Second Crusade specifically. So it's not just a random cross. It's not just a random phrase.
That isn't true. The phrase
it's not true.
It is true.
The phrase was uttered after the Council of Clermont when Pope Urban II declared the Crusade. And it was actually probably Dieu le Vul, but it's been rendered in Latin as Deus Vult.
Okay.
Has nothing to do with slaughtering Jews. Has nothing to do with slaughtering Muslims, because the Muslims had invaded Europe, not the other way around.
Oh my God! Are you really saying that the reason the Crusade, which was sent to the Holy Land to liberate the Holy Land, from whom? From Jews and Muslims.
The Crusade began because the Eastern. I'll tell you why the Crusade began. The Crusade.
You do not want to check Michael Knowles on history. He's extremely well versed in history that he loves. And I would imagine that he's about to go off right now and explain exactly the details about the causes of and responses to during the Crusades. So let's watch him cook now.
Because the Eastern Emperor asked for help from the Western Pope because the Seljuk Turks were slaughtering Christians in the Holy Land. Because those lands were Christian before the Muslims invaded in the 7th century. So that's why.
No.
Yeah,
those
good
Crusades,
to know Michael's pro-Crusade. You'll get along really well with Pete Hegseth.
Those lands became Christian after the First Crusade. Okay, so let's be very clear.
The lands were Christian in the first and second centuries, and then the Muslims. Islam didn't exist before the 7th century. What are you talking about?
Okay, I could listen. I can go all day if you want to talk about the Crusades, but the point is, I can also show you literature.
Quite fascinating, actually.
Where people.
Maybe we should switch the debate.
But what that has to do with Pete Hegseth is it's not that he has a random cross that talks about his faith in Jesus Christ. He used a very specific terminology. But putting all of that aside, a phrase
that was first uttered to defend persecuted Christians in the Middle East, just like they're being persecuted today.
Okay,
yeah.
If you want to talk about the Crusades,
that's who you want as the Secretary of Defense. Wonderful.
Yes, if it were any other religious group, especially if the other religious group was being persecuted by white people or Christians, the left would be up in arms saying, good, I'm glad this person is there defending it. But the left cannot stand Christians. If someone is Christian and they're on the left, it always kind of baffles me. I mean, to each their own. But the left, they literally, Don Lemon and stuff like that, they'll laugh at the idea of Christians being the #1 persecuted religious group in the world. I mean, even just in the last few weeks, we've seen videos coming out of places like Syria where Christians are being made to crawl and bark like dogs while they're beaten and killed. And it doesn't make, a lot of minutes on mainstream news and things like that. It just kind of passes over, and they talk about the instability of the region and things like that. But for some reason, when it's, if it's Muslims being persecuted or if it's Jews being persecuted, it leads in the headlines endlessly.
Someone who defends the person.
Julie, finish your point. Julie, finish your point, and I'll go to Michael. To Dave.
My point is that I cannot even believe that something the Vatican apologized for is something that you're defending, which is the slaughter of Jews and Muslims during the Crusades.
What did the Vatican
excuse me, the Vatican said the Crusades.
What are you talking about?
Oh my Jesus! You know what? Why don't you give me a call after this, and I will walk you through exactly.
All right, let's try and bring things back.
The treatment of Muslims in the Crusades. But if you want to talk about,
we'll do a separate Crusades debate another time. I have a home in LA, which thankfully is still standing, and I hope it continues to do so. But I know so many people who've lost their homes who are incandescent with rage about what they perceive to be persistent failures right across the board of the mayor, Karen Bass, who fled the country, having said she'd never leave the country. She went to Ghana for an inauguration as these winds were coming in, as fires were breaking out. Unbelievable dereliction of duty. You've got the Justin Trudeau of the operation in Gavin Newsom, who I think deserves a lot of heat, literally, for what is going on here and a lot of accountability. So this idea that they all should be blameless because, nature, I think is for the birds, isn't it?
Of course. And Whoopi's argument here that this was unpredictable and inevitable would be more persuasive if you hadn't had many people, up to and including President Trump, personally warning Gavin Newsom that this would happen in 2018, 2019, just at the end of last year in 2024. It was not inevitable and an act of nature that 95% of Delta rainwater was sent into the Pacific Ocean rather than filling reservoirs. It wasn't an act of nature that the Pacific Palisades Reservoir was empty, was turned off before the predictable, perennial Santa Ana winds. It was not unpredictable that you'd have 100-mile-an-hour winds. That happens regularly in L.A. It was not nature and inevitable that L.A. wouldn't have cleared its brush. These were basic political problems. Even people who were not expert in it could have seen this coming a mile away and did. And so the residents of L.A., I'm a former Angelino myself, they deserve some answers. And the politicians, Newsom and Karen Bass in particular, need to be held accountable.
A whole litany of stuff there.
Okay, so going back to the part where she's trying to claim that the Vatican apologized for the Crusades, that is completely untrue. There was a point in time where Pope John Paul II did express regret and pretty much apologized for a specific event, which would be the sack of Constantinople in 1204. But that was not a blanket apology for the Crusades. It was not even acknowledging any regret for the primary mission of the Crusades. And I don't understand why, if the United States invades the Middle East, for example, and terror groups grow and they respond by attacking, people on the left will say, well, yeah, of course that was the response. Look what you've done to their country. But if for hundreds of years you've been attacked by armies and invaded and you've been slaughtered, and then you respond, if you're white, if you're European, if you're Christian, the left says, how dare you respond? You should be better than that. And it's just these strange double standards that only apply to certain races, that only apply to certain religious groups, or I guess I should say certain race and certain religious group, because they don't care about anybody else who does it. If we were to constantly attack with our armies Mexico over and over and over, and then in response, Mexico had contacted other countries to the south of us to help retaliate and to put an end to us harming them, people would say, and they wouldn't be wrong, they would say, well, that's what you get. Good. What did you think was going to happen? Let me know in the comments what you think of this. Michael Knowles tells it like it is. This lady in the pink, I hope she does call him on the phone, and I hope they do have a conversation about it, because she could use a little tutoring session, and it seems like Michael Knowles is the guy to do it. Be sure to comment on here, like, subscribe if you want to. I'm going to keep pumping these videos out. Thanks for tuning in to MurrayMax.